what-if scenarios to say, well, what if there was a global pandemic in mid-century, or a conflict that rivaled both the First and Second World Wars together and the Spanish flu, which all came as large impacts in the 20th century? What if that magnitude of impact happened in the 21st? But we found that modelling those scenarios didn't make a large difference to those final numbers of projections. The most stringent scenario we could come up with, which was a global conflict resulting in over 5 billion deaths, still resulted in around 5 billion people by the end of the century, which, if they lived like we do today, would have a major environmental impact.
So that's because the world population has simply grown too quickly.
It's grown quickly over the 20th century, and there's a lot of demographic momentum. There's a lot of young people who are about to have children. There's a lot of people who will live a long while as life expectancy increases. So we can't wave a magic wand and make a lot of people go away. We don't want to do that. Who would you choose? You know, it's not actually a quick environmental fix, and this is our point. People often claim it's the elephant in the room for environmental problems, but what we've shown here is that other policies could have much more of a dramatic impact much more quickly.
And what are those other policies?
Well, I think we need to focus on decoupling human impacts from environmental damage. If we continue to grow our economy on the basis of clearing rainforests, major over-exploitation of natural resources such as fisheries, then we're going to continue to degrade the Earth's life support system. However, if we can deploy technologies which are more energy intensive but are using clean energy, where we're able to grow more food, say in vertical farms, artificial greenhouses that require these more intensive inputs, then we can avoid clearing new forests and we can pull back and preserve natural areas. So we can still have a lot of people, but we can feed them and we can concentrate our land use into much smaller areas.
But the clock is ticking on putting those policies in place. That is going to take a long time as well.
There are effective population policies in place today in terms of family planning, increased education of women, forms of fertility control, which are actually very effective in the long term, but they take many, many decades to have any real impact. So we actually projected our models through to say, well, based on those policies, how long would it take to get to, say, 2 billion people? It's going to be 2 to 3 centuries before we might get to that level, and that's even based on a number of optimistic assumptions.
And just going back a step, did you examine what would happen if nothing changed, if none of those policies were put in place? Would there be enough food and water for everybody, or would we be overrun by pollution? What would happen?
It's a big what if, and it's very technologically dependent. So most of the scenarios resulted in somewhere between